Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the League Express podcast. My name's Jake Kearnan, and joining me as always is the editor of League Express, Martyn Sadler. And Martyn, another favourite guest has returned.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was only 2 weeks ago that John was on the podcast and predicted that Hull Kear would do very well in the grand final at Old Trafford and Mikey Lewis would have a great game. So, John, I think you are going to earn a new living as a fortune teller because that was absolutely a brilliant prediction.
There you are, Martyn. Mr. Right.
Nostradamus.
So we obviously need your expert insight into the Ashes series, and in particular the first test at Wembley this Saturday, which is incredibly compelling, isn't it? I'm so much looking forward to it, with incredible excitement, but also a little bit of trepidation, as you tend to do with these games. How do you see it, John?
I think it's going to be an outstanding game, an outstanding occasion, a big crowd. The BBC are doing it justice as well, which is very pleasing. So when everything's set up like this, I'm pretty at ease, Martyn, because I know full well that the people who really matter deliver consistently on the field of play. And I think both teams will deliver. I think England obviously are very, very hungry indeed. And I think they're a little irked that they're being written off by everybody virtually.
Yes.
And obviously Australia have just got quality aplenty. I mean, any team that, can leave Dylan Edwards and Bradman Best and Ethan Strange out, it ain't a bad team. And that's how you can measure the strength of the Australian squad.
Well, they've named their team, Jake. As an Aussie, Jake, what do you make of your team for this Saturday? Obviously, Reece Walsh at fullback. I've no doubt you'll be delighted by that.
Yeah, well, just before we get into it, fellas, I do have a little bit of a surprise for you. I have done this on the podcast one time before, Martyn, but I'm going to do it again, mate. The last time I did it, didn't give me too much luck as a Broncos fan. The 2023 grand final, I did a big jersey reveal on the podcast, and unfortunately they lost. So hopefully this time we have a bit better luck over there. But yeah, I was quite impressed with the lineup that Kevy put forward. I'm glad that he decided to give Gemmet Shibasaki a run in the centres. Obviously, Nwanganitawazi is going to make his debut on the wing. Reece Walsh will also make his debut at fullback. So I think they've got plenty of strike across the park. But in the last 2 years, we've thought that Samoa was going to come over and Tongan was going to come over with heaps of strike and, really test England. But I don't know what it is about teams that travel to England. They just seem to really get in the arm wrestle and not put on as many points as we expect. So
well, let's
I'm hoping
hope so
it'll be
on
a
this
nice
occasion, mate.
Yeah, I'm expecting a tough battle. But mate, I'm really looking forward to it. And it's actually a good time for us. Like, is it a 2:30 kickoff over there?
It is, yes. It is.
Yeah. So for us, that's only like 9:30. Oh no, maybe
11:30 at night.
Yeah, 11:30 kickoff for Queensland. So I'll be up for that one, mate.
Yeah, I feel a bit embarrassed at not being able to take my pullover off and reveal an England shirt. No, I've got to say, Jake, but hopefully that gesture might rebound on you, mate. But
yeah. Oh, you got three games, mate, so maybe next week.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that the Australians have named their team. They named it yesterday, and it's there in front of us. Obviously, Kevin Walters feels very confident. It's the normal thing in Australia to name your match squad on a Tuesday, so he's simply following that convention. But I mean, John, if you were Shaun Wane, you actually look at the team that Kevin has named, and how would you respond? I mean, for example, in the key spine positions, Shaun does have a few options, doesn't he? Obviously, we assume he's going to play George Williams, but will he partner him with Mikey Lewis or Harry Smith? Will he play Jack Welsby at fullback, or will AJ Brimson have a role, to give strike? There are quite a lot of questions that Shaun has to work out before selecting the side. And obviously, you're a coach. You're a former England coach. What would your decisions be in that regard?
Well, I think it's really interesting about them naming the team because I think it shows the confidence that they're coming over with and that they've got within their playing group. And he's just laid the cards on the table, hasn't he? This is what we've got. This is how good we are. Try and match it. And Shaun is sort of playing a more cagey game, and I understand that because he'll be trying to. There are questions about the English team as the spine and obviously throughout as well. Who's going to be on the wing? Will it be Young and Burgess? Will it be Johnston? So there's all sorts of questions, and he might be sort of thinking that it'll hamper the Australian preparation, but I just think Australia will be fully prepared. I think it's been a masterstroke of Kevin Walters to appoint Willie Peters because he has got the in of the Super League and the English game. So it's just fascinating, and I love the mind games. And already we've had a little bit of an allusion as well to the referee, haven't we, Liam Moore? What rules is he going to referee by, and
precisely
how quick will the rugby straight away? And I know as well, being an international coach, you get referees visit you in the hotel to try to clarify all little grey areas of the two hemispheres. So it'd be really, really interesting to see. But I'll tell you one thing, if England win, Liam Moore will cop a load of stick from the Australians, no doubt about that.
I did make a reference in my column this week, though, John, to situations in the past where English referees have sometimes almost seemed to bend over backwards to accommodate the Australians. And I do worry about that sometimes. And I really hope that Liam Moore will not go down that route. I think, just referee it straight down the middle and don't make any concessions to either side, really.
Well, I thought he was really good in the grand final.
Yeah,
Martyn. So, all he's got to do, I mean, all you want referees to do in big games is referee the game. Don't go into there with any preconceived ideas. Just referee, stay in the moment and referee what's in front of you. And I'm pretty sure if he does that, he'll do it well. And I'm pretty sure if he does it well, it will be a great spectacle.
Just ask you, Jake, how do you think Mark Nawakanatiwa, you say it, Nawanganitawazi. Yeah, he's a really interesting selection, isn't he? I mean, he's been outstanding for the Roosters this year, and I think he's there really. He deserves to be there on his performances, and he's a hell of a player. He's only playing rugby league for 2 years before going back to the other code, and it's going to be interesting to see whether they kick to him. He's great in the air, isn't he? He's incredibly nimble on his feet, especially near to the line. Do you think he's going to be a real major threat for us on Saturday?
I think so, mate, and I think that's why Wayne's opted for some taller wingers to be able to contest some of those crossfield kicks. The thing with Mark is what's impressed me most about him is his development. He came into the league. You could see that he had the ability to get to the try line, but there was a few question marks around some of his defensive decision making, what he was like under the high ball. But as the year's gone on, he's just gotten better and better and better, and we saw it towards the end of the year where he scored a few tries in one of their final matches. And yeah, it's kind of sad that we're going to see him go back to rugby. But, I think he's earned his spot in the Kangaroos squad. And there's no doubt as the end of the year came around, he was probably the best winger in the competition. So, yeah, I just think that if they could have had him and, say, Xavier Coates on the other wing, I just think that would cause a headache for England. Obviously, Xavier Coates pulled out.
Josh Addo-Carr's not a bad winger, though, is he?
That's it. Not a bad replacement.
Very
Fox.
Terrific pace.
Well, the interesting thing about the Fox too was, obviously Parramatta didn't make the finals, but he got straight onto the phone to Kevin Walters when their season ended and said, I'm going to keep training. Where am I at for selection? And Kevy said, oh, well, mate, keep training and you'll find out. And he didn't get picked in that original squad, but got the call up after Coates and Lomax pulled out. And I read something the other day. He's the fittest he's ever been, apparently, and he lost a heap of weight this season. So, he's always performed in the Kangaroos jumper in the past. He was pivotal in the World Cup. So, yeah, I'm excited to see him back in the Kangaroos jersey as well.
Just ask you, John. Talking about Marky Mark, marking him on the wing. He plays on the right, so he'd be up against our left winger. Would you pick Joe Burgess or Tom Johnston for that role?
If I had been Shaun Wane, Martyn, I would see how they're training and how they're fitting in with, because it'll be Farnworth, won't it, inside him? So I would see how both Tom and Joe have looked in combinations in training, because it's going to be both are very, very good with ball in hand, in yardage and finishing. But you need that connection from wing, centre and the three-man in as well to defend on the edges, because a lot of... I wish they'd have called him Bill Smith or something like that instead of Mark Nower, whatever his name is. But
so do I. Yes.
Yeah. But a lot of his tries were when he got the numbers of the opposition and he got released, and then he found, for such a big man, he was so athletic and he found a way to ground the ball. So I'm certain they'll be trying to stop the ball getting to him from the inside. So I would look how well the combinations have gone in training before making that selection. But, Burgess and Johnstone are very, very good wingers, defensively as well as offensively.
Incidentally, John, are you doing TV or radio this weekend?
No, not this weekend. No, it's I've been lucky enough to get, I think it's the best one, the third test gig, because I'm hoping it's one apiece and I can commentate on England winning the Ashes. So I'm delighted with that.
Well, I was going to say, before then, you'll have to learn how to say Mark's name, won't you?
I know, yeah. Well, I'm going to wait for all the commentators to do it this weekend.
I'll do the phonetics for you, John. It'll be a long phonetics, but
yeah.
Fellas, I wanted to ask you both. Martyn, you mentioned in your column this week, but what do you think Shaun Wane will do with his attack? Do you think he will play that, arm wrestle, play it safe, get to your fifth tackle kick, and try and win the game in defence, or do you think he's going to try and throw the ball around a bit with a Mikey Lewis?
My suspicion is that he'll start with Harry Smith and George Williams, but I think he'll have Mikey Lewis on the bench, hopefully ready to come onto the field when the Aussie forwards start tiring. That's if they do, of course. But I think Shaun is a naturally fairly conservative coach, who wouldn't probably sees the opening 20 or 25 minutes as an attritional game, and then it might open out later on. What do you think, John? Do you think he's likely to do that?
There's a great saying in rugby league, well, in all coaching, that if you do what you've always done, you get what you've always got.
Yeah.
And I think it might be the time to release a bit of an X factor and a bit of a maverick within them. And I would certainly start Mikey Lewis. I just think that when you've had the season he's had, you've just come out off of the grand final when he answered loads of critics' question marks about him, and he dominated the game. He was outstanding. He outplayed Bevan French easily in that game. You just feel that the time is right for him.
He's on a roll, isn't he?
Yes, he is. And for me, he's got to play. He has got to start. He's the best halfback in Super League. So if you've got the best halfback in Super League, you play him.
Well, of course, some people say one of the best halfbacks in Super League is Jake Connor, who's not even in the squad. So what did you think about that, by the way?
Yeah, well, again, it's if you don't, you always get what you've always got. Jake's another maverick, isn't he? Who can pull things out. So it might have been a great halfback combination, but he hasn't picked him. That's the top and bottom of it, and it's Shaun's team, and Shaun's a highly respected coach. He's had great success over the years, so you've got to
live or die by your selections, don't you?
Yes, you do. You do very much so. And if he's proved right, I'm sure everybody who's criticised him for not picking Jake, can sit back and think, well, good on you, Shaun, well done, and we've got the Ashes.
Well, if we win the Ashes, Shaun will be the best coach in the world, as far as I'm concerned, John.
Correct.
Let's face it, that it's the biggest test of any coach, playing against Australia, and if Shaun passes it with flying colours, we will all be absolutely delighted. That's what we're all hoping for, of course. But it's one thing to hope; it's another thing for it to actually work out. And
But I think, Martin, as well, there's all sorts of little things that, like Jez Litton, how's he going to employ Jez Litton? Because I thought Jez, again, he's had a super season, but it was always better in my mind when Mickey McIlaurin did the first 20,
yeah,
and then he came on and the momentum of the game changed. So, will he use Jess from the start? Will he start with Darryl Clark and let him do a 20-25 job before finishing off with Jez? It's fascinating, and these are all conundrums that will only be answered when we witness the spectacle at Wembley on Saturday.
absolutely. And what about the forward pack, mate? How would you start? Would you select Alex Walmsley as starting prop and Matt Elise perhaps as St Helens pair, especially if they're with Darryl Clark? That would be an all St Helens front row, wouldn't it?
That makes sense, but it would be very, very harsh, and especially when you've got Morgan Knowles, because that would be 8, 9, 10, 13. All the middle unit would be all Saints players then, so it does make sense. But if you're McMeekin, who's had that great season at Wakefield, I think you'd half expect to start as well. So again, there's conundrums in there, and I can see the reason why Shaun's naming his team on Thursday rather than declaring his hand early on.
I would think McMeekin would be at least on the bench, even if he wasn't starting.
He's got to be in the 17. Yeah,
I can't imagine that he wouldn't be, to be honest. And there are a lot of other players who might be looking. Morgan Smithers, for example, has had a good season for Canberra, hasn't he, this year? And
he's the ideal one to come on as rotate with Morgan Knowles, because Morgan Knowles plays at 1,001 miles per hour from minute one, and he can do 80 minutes, but it'd be even more effective if he was rotated and his minutes were managed. So I think he would be ideal to come off the bench, would Smithers, and rotate with Knowles.
And let me put another name into the mix, because a player who I really enjoy watching, and we're talking about the X Factor. Kai Pearce-Paul obviously has had that season with Newcastle, which not a great season for Newcastle this year as a club, but Pearce-Paul has got a real strong offloading game, hasn't he? And I wonder whether that's going to be quite important for us going into this game. Obviously, a player who offloads the ball a lot, sometimes that can go wrong. Of course, if you're offloading in unwise situations. But what would you have him in either the starting lineup or on the bench, John?
Yeah, start him. Yeah, there won't be any hesitation in starting him because of that factor. And again, it's something different, isn't it? So it's another thing that they've got to deal with, and you've got to trust your players that they'll make good decisions in the right sort of surroundings. So yeah, I'd certainly start Kai Pearce-Paul, and there again you've then got Bateman, who's got runs on the board in the internationals, can also be pushed out into the centre should there be an injury there, against Callum Watkins, who can cover everywhere and could possibly start in the second row. So again, there's all sorts of conundrums and
loads of combinations.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
And absolutely. I noticed, by the way, that Mike Stevenson, Steve-O, formerly the Sky commentator, was very critical of John Bateman being in the squad, saying he'd not really had a great season for North Queensland Cowboys. I just wonder what you think of that. Do you think Bateman, has he picked Bateman on reputation rather than form this season?
I think as a coach, you get a trust with your players. And I think Shaun's got a trust with John Bateman. And I think he feels he's got the runs on the board. And by having those runs on the board, it's justified in, I think he'll start him. And if he starts and plays well, it's been right. If he starts and doesn't play well, obviously, you feel he might not be playing in test number 2. So it's all there for them. But there is a trust element that coaches develop with players, and you hang your hat on those players. And I think John Bateman's probably one that Shaun's like that through his sort of Wigan years as well as through his England years as well.
Yeah.
Also, just off the back of that, Martyn, I think with Bateman this year at the Cowboys, like he hasn't been outstanding, he hasn't stood out, but he's just been a steady hand. And when you look at Australia's back row, they've got Angus Crichton and Hudson Young, both very handy back rowers that can punch a hole. You probably want a steady hand who can defend there and really shut down that strikeout wide, and who has faced those players before. So maybe that's what he's thinking. I'm not sure if he will go with that pick in the end. We'll have to wait and see what his team list looks like, but maybe having that experience there could go a long way.
But I would say, Jake, that Callum Watkins has got that as well. Callum's been sensational. I think he's been the best signing during the season of anybody, going from Salford to Leeds. And he's been a revelation, whether he's played at number 13 in the middle channel, whether he's played right centre, whether he's played...
He's still got it, hasn't he? That's the point.
He has, very much so. And he's stacked with experience and self-belief. So we could argue all day long about who should start, etc., etc. But, the men who've got that job, Kevin Walters and Shaun Wane, Kevin's already declared his hand. Shaun will declare his tomorrow. So it's just fascinating, and it's great in the build-up. It's great for us all to have talking points like this.
It certainly is. Yeah.
It's even harder too, because I was just going to say, with it being a 3-game series, John, like, how crucial is it to get that selection maybe 80%, 85% correct in that first game, so that for game 2 they have to just make a little tweak here and there, rather than perhaps having a big blowout scoreline where you've got to rethink the whole plan.
I think it's absolutely vital, Jake. And in all honesty, from an England point of view, we need to win this first one. It's absolutely vital. I think if England are going to win the Ashes, we've got to win the first one at Wembley. It's feasible for Australia to come back in Test 2 and 3 and clinch it. I don't think it's so feasible for us. I think we need to get this one and then nick another, whether it's at Everton or whether it's at Leeds. And that's the way I see England having their opportunity to clinch the Ashes.
It's often been the pattern in the past, hasn't it, John? Going back many years, where we have won the first game, but then the Aussies have won the second and third one to clinch the series. And as you say, the Aussies sometimes seem to be slightly underdone for the first test. But obviously, as they settle into the series, they work us out basically, and learn how to beat us. And so, as you say, I think it really is. I'm very glad that the second and third tests have been sold out, because if we did suffer a significant defeat, it would be very disappointing this weekend, wouldn't it?
Martyn, it won't be a significant defeat this week. I can tell you that. It's going to be closer than people are expecting.
Good.
And I just, the players are very proud people, and they're getting a great opportunity. It's the first Ashes series for 20 years, isn't it? And it's the first time we played Australia since, was it 2017 or something? So
yes.
It's a big, big day for us especially. Rather, Australia play New Zealand, Samoa, Tonga regularly in the Pacific Championships. This is a massive, massive day for us in the British game. And I think the players will know its importance. They'll know the history of the occasion, and I'm certain they'll put a great performance up. So I'm not buying into this. We'll get walloped. I'm not saying we'll definitely win, but I don't think we'll get walloped. I think it'll be a very, very tight, intense affair with this first test. The thing that worries me is when I look at the spine of Walsh, Munster, Cleary and Grant, that's some spine, and they can handle any situation, and they can change mid-game, which is something that you really, you can hang your hat on as a coach.
Well, they've got Tom Dearden on the bench, who's a pretty useful player, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, and Mitchell Moses sat in the stands with us, so it's a very, very strong squad. But that spine is sensational. It really is, and Cleary can change his team dynamic on the field of play, which is a very, very difficult thing to do. And he's done it year after year with the Panthers. And I'm sure he'll be able to do it with Australia.
It's going to be absolutely fascinating to see how Nathan Cleary links up with Reece Walsh, isn't it? Having those two guys on the same side, that's really something to look out for, I think. And again, if you were a coach, John, of the England side, I'm by the end of this week, I'm going to make you the coach, I think. But if you were the coach, how would you counter that threat? Reece Walsh at the back. I mean, we saw in the grand final that he's arguably the best player in the world at the moment. I know that's a contentious point, and Cleary perhaps is, but his performance in the grand final was absolutely outstanding. And if he repeats that on Saturday, he'll take some handling, won't he?
Well, what I would do is I would look at Hull Kingston Rovers and how they dealt with Bevan French and Jai Fields' problems, and found a solution. And I thought the edge defence of Hull Kingston Rovers was sensational in that grand final. And I would base my game plan around that. And it would be very much going up, getting high and killing the backman as best you can by jamming in and testing the Aussie skills to get the ball out to the wingman. And if they do get to the wingman, you've got to rely on your fullback and your loop defence round the back to cover that. So I would challenge their skill and by taking time and space off them and really having an aggressive edge defence.
Let's hope Shaun's watching this podcast, mate.
He'll have his solution already worked out, and they'll have been working all week. Yeah.
I think the Kiwis set a pretty good blueprint over the weekend on how they handled Brian Toto in his kick returns in that New Zealand Samoa match. Instead of kicking away from him, they said, you know what, we're just going to put it up high and we're just going to get down there and jam him so he doesn't have the time to get that run up. And then by kicking to him, that took away his ability to go in and get that first hit up or second hit up off the ruck, which is what he's so good at in that, in that yardage. But I think England should just put it up high every time to Walsh and just let him know that they're going to be there as soon as he catches it and just try and shut him down that way.
Yeah, don't try and avoid him, in other words, but try and handle him is basically what we're saying.
Well, try and belt him, handle him. Let's be aggressive with him as well, because he can play. There's no doubt about that. I haven't seen one individual dominate a grand final in both hemispheres as he did. His performance was absolutely sublime, but it was not only sublime attacking-wise, which everybody's known he's had for a long, long time. It was sublime defensively as well, and shows his development as a player. So we've got to challenge him. We've got to be aggressive with him. We've got to be physical with him, and we've got to try and get under his skin.
Absolutely. So, as far as Saturday's match is concerned, John, are we calling it a draw at this stage? Too hard to call.
It is too hard to call, I'm pleased to say, yes. If you're going to push me, Martyn, I'm going to go for England, and that will make this series a great series.
It will. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
That would be great. I think if England could win that first game, just to shut up some of the cocky journalists on this side of the world, because there's so many journos that are commenting how we're going to belt England, and they probably haven't watched the game of Super League for the last 3 or 4 years. It's just I think but then there are former Super League players that do have podcasts and things like that who are actually giving England players and the competition the props that it deserves. And if they keep up this chatter in Australia,
the secret is the players on podcasts are giving them respect, not the journos. Well, it's a lot harder to play than it is to write about playing.
That's why I write.
So it's
absolutely right, John. But a lot of arrogance is a bit of a trait among some Australians, isn't it? Present company accepted, of course.
I just think it's great, that Aaron Wood's come out with it, and then Josh Hodgson and James Graham are giving a bit of serve back. It's great because it all helps in the build-up, and you use that to inspire you and enjoy the occasion. It's what we've missed. Let's have a bit of sledging. Let's be physical. I'm not saying as physical perhaps as Adrian Morley was when he started that test match, but let's be very physical and challenge them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you, fellas.
Sorry, go on, James.
I was going to say, do you think there will be any fireworks in Game 1? Do you think that we could see, tempers flare?
I hope so.
Well, yeah. The thing is, though, in the modern game, it's so easy to be given a yellow card compared to what it used to be in the old days. So discipline's such an important thing, isn't it? And I think, to get anybody yellow carded, particularly early on in the game, is something that we're going to have to really try to avoid. I just don't think that it's got to be controlled aggression, basically, John, hasn't it? I think.
But I mean, nowadays, Martin, they just come together and push and shove and whisper things in each other's ears, don't they? So I mean,
But it's high tackles, it's high
it
tackles
is,
that
yeah.
are the problem.
But again, I want this Ashes series to be decided by the players. I don't want us to be saying, what about Liam Moore's decision in game one? What about Grant Atkins' decisions in game two? I want the players to decide who's going to win this Ashes series, and if that's the case, I'll be happy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, any last predictions before we move on to some other topics, fellas?
I've given mine, Jake.
You're giving
England
you a win.
I'll go with England to win by 4 points. Jake, what do you say?
I can't say an England win. I'll be accused of being a traitor, and the pitchforks will be out. But I'll go Australia by 2 points in a nail biter. Hopefully, golden point. Is it golden point for internationals, or is that extra time?
Point. There's a golden point in Test 3 if it's a deciding test.
Yes,
but if it's a draw after 80 minutes in Test 1 and 2, it's a draw.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool. All right, fellas. Well, the other big news. So much has happened over the last week or so. Obviously, we had the IMG gradings come out and be announced. But yeah, the big news is we're going to have 3 new teams in Super League next year: Bradford, Toulouse, and York. Did this surprise you at all, John?
I think that the Toulouse one did, but I think Toulouse forced the hand by winning the grand final. If you'd have asked me before the grand final, I'd have gone London instead of Toulouse. But I think because Toulouse went over to York, won the grand final, I think if they wouldn't have got into Super League, they'd have just said, well, what can we do? Because they've been in the last 3 grand finals.
Yeah.
They've won one, and they've consistently been at the top end of the championship, and they've been full-time. They've put the money where their mouth is, so they've been full-time during that time. So if they wouldn't have got in, they'd just say, well, what do we have to do to get in? It's impossible. So I think they forced the hand, and I'm pleased they forced the hand on the field of play, because that's where I think it should be decided, not in LED screens and television.
No.
But anyway, that's just me. That's just me.
Yeah, but they obviously impressed the panel, didn't they? I mean, obviously the questions about finance, none of us quite know how each of the 3 clubs that are coming in are how financially stable they are. We hope they all are, of course. But Toulouse must have given enough information to impress the panel. So, and I think to have 2 French clubs in a 14-team Super League, giving a French derby, so to speak, now in France, will do an awful lot for French Rugby League, John. Don't you? I mean, you've been involved with French Rugby League in various ways, over the years, and you know a bit about it. I mean, that surely has to be a really positive development for them.
I agree. I think it's a fillip for the French game, and hopefully it will take on. And I know that Toulouse, that they've said they're going to stick with a lot of. They took a conscious decision this year. They went for a younger end players, and it paid off ultimately. And they're saying they're sticking with them, but they're just going to add. I think it's 3 or 4 sort of big name signings, and I've no doubt they'll come from down under. So I like their philosophy. I like what they're going to. They're saying we're not going to try and rebuild our team because we haven't got time. We're going with what we've got, with just some, icing on the cake, and we'll be good enough with that. So I like the philosophy. I think they've earned their opportunity, and hopefully they'll be successful. And it's certainly a big fillip for the French game.
What do you think about the fact that Toulouse and York will only get half the funding of the other teams in Super League?
Yeah, it's a bit tough, isn't it? But they must have agreed to it, and it makes things. It's a difficult task anyway, going from Championship to Super League. But Hull, KR, Lee, and Wakefield have done a pretty good job on it, so it is achievable. But it's even tougher when you've only got half the funding that your competitors have got in a salary cap sport. So, they're behind the black ball already, but it's up to them to find a way of getting themselves out of that snooker and getting themselves into, into a competitive Super League, which I'm sure that they will add to it.
One guy that I'm really pleased for, by the way, given what's happened, is Mark Applegarth, the coach at York.
Yeah.
who had a really tough time at Wakefield in 2023 and obviously left the club at the end of that season, and was replaced there by Darryl Powell. And that's obviously been a great, successful move for Wakefield. But I believed at the time that Mark was a far better coach than those results at Wakefield would have suggested, because obviously he was doing it on a very limited budget and so on, and very limited resources at Wakefield. And to see him bounce back at York and now to have a second chance at coaching in Super League, I think's great for him. Is a real great guy, I think, and I just wish him all the very best.
I agree totally. I mean, if you know Mark, and I know him very well indeed, he's honest, he's hardworking, and he's resilient. And that's just what you needed. And I thought he was very respectful and dignified when he was head coach at Wakefield. He never threw his players under the bus. He always supported his players and stood with them. And he was always respectful of the opposition's ability, etc. And then those traits that he's demonstrated, the honesty, the hard working, the resilience, has come through in his position at York. But he's had a better hand, shall we say, in the Championship at York, and he's certainly come to fruition. And I'm absolutely delighted for him, and he thoroughly deserves it. I'm also delighted for Sylvain Houlis as well, Martyn. You know, the Toulouse coach.
Yeah.
Because he's another who stood by that club through. He's been their coach for a number of years now, and he obviously does something right because they're so consistently successful. And again, you've got to tip your hat to Sylvain as well.
Absolutely. Out of the three clubs that have been promoted, who do you think is set up best to have success next year?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, what Bradford have got, and when I was at Bradford, I fought for this to keep the academy, rather than just put all your front load everything on the first team. Bradford have got a great player development system, no doubt about that. You've only to look at the number of Bradford players who've lit up Super League teams. Well, George Flanagan Jr. this last year, that's symptomatic of what they've got going at Bradford. Ollie Wilson earlier on went to Huddersfield. There's numerous of them throughout, and if you look at players who've been involved at Bradford, there's plenty of them dotted around Super League. So they've had a great academy system coming through. So that's one big thing they've got. The negative is the stadium, which I think they're fully aware of, and the playing area, because I'm certain there'll be some moaning and groaning from other Super League coaches when they see the size of that playing area, because it is tiny. And that's one thing I think that they'll have to improve upon. So that's the negative and the positive of Bradford. And they've got a great supporter base as well. I was fortunate to be there when we bet Leeds, a Super League team, as a Championship team. And on that day in the Challenge Cup, we got 10,000 plus folk at Odsal, and it was brilliant. The atmosphere was sensational. Yes. So all that's very, very positive for Bradford, but the stadium's a negative that they've got to sort out. York's got they've just got the setup. They've got the elite side sorted, but they need a development side as well with regard to things like the academy. So it'll be interesting to see how they invest in that to bring players through. And Toulouse, I think, their setup's sensational. That stadium there and everything, it's sensational. And they've got the training area and it's established. So perhaps Toulouse are the more rounded of all of them with regard to the Challenger Super League. But I think Bradford's fans and Bradford's player development give them a big advantage. And York's elite status at the stadium, it gives them a big one. But they've got to look at their player development one to improve and become a Super League side.
Absolutely, yeah. So what do you think about London not making it, John? Do you think actually it might almost be an advantage for London to be able to spend a year in the Championship and build from there, put an infrastructure into place that then is Super League ready by the end of next season?
I agree with you. I mean, Gary Hetherington will obviously have a big impact when he goes down there. So he'll have had a year down there before they're looking to get in next year. Jason Demetriou is an outstanding coach. And I know full well he's researching the Championship in depth. And I think the signing of the Wakefield Neil Chimamba is a great signing as well. A young player who's something to prove, is on a year's loan down in London, and I know they're looking at other young players to bring through, as well as obviously established NRL stars. So I think they will sweep the board in the Championship next year, and I think they'll be ready for Super League the year after that. And I do think, I know they'll be very disappointed, but I do think they'll see it in the fullness of time as a blessing in disguise and as a way to get 12 months to get Super League ready.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, it should be easier for them to attract fans to watch a winning side than to watch a side that might not be a winning side in Super League. Because as far as London people are concerned, they probably don't know much. They probably don't know the difference, for example, between Lee and Barrow, and they won't know that Lee are a Super League side and an extremely good side, and Barrow are a Championship side and a fairly moderate side. If those teams go down to London and London beat them, they'll be happy, I think. And
they just need a Super League victory in the Challenge Cup, something like that, to just ignite it as well. They're going to hang their hat on. So I think it's really exciting times for London. I think Gary will have a big impression. I think the investments that's coming will have a big impression. And I know full well Jason Dimitri will have a big impression. So I think it's really exciting times for the Broncos.
And it is really a nice venue, isn't it, at Wimbledon? It's just the right size for them.
Yeah, well, I think that's been one of the problems with it. They're flitted about everywhere. London were at their most successful when they were based at the Stoop, and they were there a number of years, and they came second in Super League, didn't they, one year?
Yes.
So, there is the possibilities there, and I do think the crowds will increase, and it will increase on the back of them winning regularly, and I think they will win regularly. I mean, I think they've a possibility of going through the full season, league season, undefeated. So that's bound to attract fans because, fans like success.
Of course they do, yes. I couldn't agree more.
Well, some of the other big news, fellas, Paul Rowley signed on as St Helens head coach. Did you hear any whispers of this happening, Martyn, or did it sort of come as a bit of a surprise?
I did hear I do know that St Helens have admired Salford's attacking play for quite a long time. You've only got to speak to somebody at St Helens and they would tell you that, they did admire Salford a lot. And the funny thing was that before the start of the season, if you remember in the pre-season games, before Salford, all the extent of the trouble was revealed, Salford went to St Helens and beat them convincingly in a pre-season match. And, I remember, St Helens people saying, my goodness, this looks a hell of a good Salford side. And then, of course, it all collapsed. But they've admired Rowley for a long time. And I felt sorry for Paul Wellens, not having his contract renewed. But I can see why, if they're not going to go with Paul, they'd want to go with Paul Wellens. They'd want to go with Paul Rowley, because I think Paul does have a reputation for producing what you might call crowd-pleasing rugby. And, historically, St Helens have been a crowd-pleasing side. In more recent years, they've tended to focus on getting their defensive organisation right at the highest possible level. But I think the crowd would now like to see more attacking play from them, and I think that's what Paul has more or less indicated that's what he's going to try and provide.
And I think Paul Rowley also provides, he gives young players a chance, and he backs young players, their ability. And obviously Saints have got a plethora of those. So it'll be a good fit for that. And I think he's a great fit for St Helens at this stage in their development, because Justin Holbrook, and Christian Wolf, they really did nail the defensive aspect of the game. Well, I'm certain Paul will maintain that, but then what Paul will bring is his philosophy. He's had a philosophy. If you're confident to pass the ball 10 yards away from the opposition line, why don't you pass the ball as well 10 yards from your own line? If you've got the skill level, you've rehearsed it enough, you've practiced it enough, back your skill. And I think that will sit really well with St Helens, and I think it will obviously assist the development of your Whitbys, your Robertsons, your Dagnalls. There's plenty of them coming through.
I think if you actually looked at the last few years since Paul Rowley's been at Salford, I suspect, and I've not got any stats to back this up, John, but I just suspect that they probably have scored more tries from a play the ball that started in their own half of the field than any other club, because they've been prepared to attack from deep, haven't they? And that's and at the end of the day, our sport is an entertainment, isn't it? And fans love seeing length of the field tries. I mean, it's a bit like that St Helens try that beat Leeds in the semi-final of the playoffs. If you see a try like that, it's worth any number of 5 drives and a kick, isn't it? It's just great to watch, and Saints fans I'm sure want to see more of that sort of thing.
Well, they want to see entertaining rugby league, Martyn, but they still want to win.
Oh yeah,
so yes, you've got there's a fine line between two, because I always believe the most the rugby that fans love the most is winning rugby. And because we all like to win, don't we? And so there'll be a fine line, but I'm certain how the team's set up now, because the DNA of the St Helens team very much is defensive based. Well, I think Paul will add to the offensive play, and I think they're in for a very exciting season over at St Helens. And I think it's great that Paul's challenging himself as well. I read that, he's never been to a big club. Well, I'll tell you what, it's harder coaching smaller clubs sometimes, because your resources aren't as good. So, give him the resources and the player quality that there already is at St Helens, and you might well be surprised and excited by what 2026 is going to hold for the Red V.
Well, I'm sure St Helens fans will be excited, and I think it'll do wonders for their season ticket sales, to be honest, having Paul Rowley there. So that's really great news for them.
Fellas, we also had some Pacific Championship games take place on this side of the world over the weekend. The big one, New Zealand beating Samoa 24 points to 18. It was a really tough contest. Obviously, we got to see Payne Haas for the first time in a Samoan jersey playing 80 minutes of football in the middle. I think Samoa were unlucky not to get the win here. They blew a couple of opportunities. Did you fellas get a chance to watch this one?
Yeah, it was a great game. A really good game. And what I love was a stat that the commentary team gave, that the 8, 10 and 13 of Samoa, their average weight was about 117 kilograms each. And, Payne Haas is obviously one of those, and he played 80 minutes. So you think, well, if you're as big and fast as that and you can play minutes like that, the game really is accelerating on into new heights. And it was just a great game. It was just a great game. New Zealand looked as if they were comfortable early on. Samoa came back and dominated it, and then it was obviously all went down to that last try, which was pretty controversial as to whether he grounded it on the whitewash or not. But it was just a really top quality game by two top quality teams, and I think it shows how international rugby league has progressed in the Southern Hemisphere. And that's the challenge we've got in the Northern Hemisphere, to come up with something similar and buy into it and stick with it. And the key to it has been all the heritage players all pinning this, Payne Haas, great example. He pinned his colours to the Samoan nation, and we could do that over here, hopefully. And if we did that, we'd get a better, more intense international competition here, which would develop the international game.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think the Pacific Cup is a terrific development for rugby league, and the 3-corner tournament this year between Samoa, New Zealand, and Tonga. I mean, Samoa and Tonga are playing this weekend at Suncorp, Jake, aren't they? And people are saying, it'll be a crowd well over 30,000 by the sound of it. I don't know what it'll end up at, but it's really caught the imagination. And it was so interesting to see in New Zealand at the weekend how many Samoan fans were there. I'm sure that a lot of Samoan fans who would have been there would have been New Zealand Warriors fans. A lot of New Zealanders are have Samoan heritage, don't they? And they love their heritage, and it made it a very atmospheric game, and. And oh gosh, they could so easily have won it, as you say. And Samoa now need to beat Tonga, don't they, to stay in the competition this weekend. And I noticed the Tongan squad has been back in Tonga, and they've had an heroic reception from the people there in the capital city Rarotonga. And it's really, this Pacific Cup is really catching people's imagination, I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, mate. And I think, for anyone who watched that game, you could hear through the speakers, it was a Samoan home crowd for sure. And I know this weekend the Jillaroos are playing Samoa in the game beforehand, and they're actually on the Sunshine Coast at the moment in camp, the Jillaroos squad, and they're expecting it to be a pretty hostile environment when they go down to Suncorp to play, because obviously they'll have the Samoan women's playing and then the Samoan men. So I reckon it'll be a pretty one-sided crowd, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of Tongan supporters there as well. I'm trying to get down there to watch it, so yeah, it's going to be a great match. I
think the
couldn't tell you who's going to
don't
win.
need to worry too much, though, Jake. I think they're an absolutely great side.
Saying that though, I watched the New Zealand women play the Samoan team over the weekend. I think Samoa got out to like a 20-point lead at half time, and then the Kiwi Ferns came back. But yeah, the Samoan women's side are really kicking goals at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other match, we had Fiji beating Cook Islands 44 points to 24, and Dream Buller, the superstar in this one, scored was it 4 tries in the first half? Or
4 tries in the first half, yeah.
It scored in 13 minutes, the first 13 minutes. So, it ain't a bad fullback, that is for certain. And it just shows the wealth of talent that there is in the NRL and the standard of the game. And Cook Islands will have been pleased with that, Jake, because it's a vast improvement on their performance last year. And that's what you get if you play regularly. You'll get players putting their hand up to play for a country, and what they'll do, that country will improve simply by playing against elite opposition. And Cook Islands showed that, but the Fiji team's a great team, and that fullback is something else.
Well, that's it. You look at how far Samoa and Tonga have come over the past few years, and you just wonder whether our Fiji, that next team, does really start to build over the next few years. But yeah, and like as you said on the Cook Islands side, the more visibility we have of them playing, it'll start, sparking the idea for young players coming through that there is a pathway for them to play at an international level. So, yeah, the more international games we can have, the better, I say.
I agree. Totally.
And of course, as Papua New Guinea, they've not played yet in the Pacific Bowl, but a lot of people are thinking they should be the next major international threat that's coming up, because of course they're going to have an NRL team in a couple of years' time, and it's not. I think it was last year that their under-19 team drew with the Aussies, didn't they? If I remember rightly, Jake. I mean, that's a really interesting one, isn't it? That they are progressing at a rate of knots, it seems to me, and I think they'll be up alongside Tonga and Samoa pretty quickly, really. And again, it's an incredibly exciting prospect. And we need to get France up at that level, as John sort of implied. We need France to be able to compete at the same level as us and the South Pacific nations too. And the sooner we can do that, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you see the France team were running opposed sessions against the Australian side down in London this week? Which is good to see. And do they have a game coming up against Jamaica?
I think they do. Yes. As a World Cup, a World Cup game that will see them go through to the World Cup. I think if they win it, which I think they're pretty certain to do. So hopefully the French can make progress. That's what we all want more than anything, I think.
And I think that opposed session, that was a lot down to Trent Robinson, wasn't it? Who's obviously still involved with France. So that's a great involvement as well, because he's very proud of that as well. So I think that's all positive for France. But I agree, Martyn. the French team, that they just need to be able to play England and us to worry about them beating us. That would be when we know that the international game is progressing. When we think, oh, we're playing France, and we're not thinking, well, they're going to win, but how many are they going to win by?
64-0, that's not what we want, is it?
We go in and we think, well, are they going to win? That would be show when it's made progress. Like, New Zealand now, when they play Samoa, it's not by how many, it's are we going to win? And as demonstrated in that last game, it was a tough game, and they just came out on the right side of the ledger, and even then that was controversial. So that's what games need to be like.
Dead right, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it'd be great, and you touched on it before, John, but to one day see some English players deciding to represent maybe their Scottish heritage or their Irish heritage or Welsh even, especially with the World Cup around the corner, but. Yeah, that's probably something for a few years down the track, perhaps. But surely there's players out there who might, I don't know what Jake Connor's heritage is, but maybe he could somehow, represent another country. I'm sure he'd love to, just to prove Shaun Wane wrong.
Well, I can tell you, Morgan Knowles and Harry Smith, they've both got Welsh heritage. So that'd be a nice start.
You tried to get them playing for Wales, John, didn't you?
I did, yes. Well, we got Morgan in the 2017 World Cup, but it was so good in the 2017 World Cup. I mean, I remember saying to Mark Moxon, my assistant coach, I says, "Oh, he'll be at every World Cup coming through." And Matt said, "Hey, that confident will qualify?" I said, "No, he'll be wearing England shirts because he was so good, And but if we could have got him to commit to Wales, and you got Harry Smith to commit, other people would commit, and it'd be a snowball effect, and all of a sudden you become competitive.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely.
Okay, mate.
All right, fellas. Martyn, is there anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here today? Or John, do you have any other points you want to touch on, mate?
I'm just interested in... Sorry, Martyn.
I think we've covered a lot of ground there, John and Jake, and it's just a case now of looking forward to see what happens this weekend, mate. That's the... it's just 3 days away, isn't it? And I can't wait.
I think it's one of the best things to happen to International Rugby League for a long, long time. And I know you've got your Aussie jersey on, Jake, but we need England to win that first test, and it'll absolutely ignite it.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I do have my souvenir England Rugby League water bottle here, so
covering both bases then, yeah.
Yeah, covering both bases, mate. But yes, hopefully it's a really good spectacle, and hopefully next week we're all still on speaking terms and we can all come together and be grown-ups about it.
Okay.
But yeah, all right, fellas. Well, thanks very much for joining us again, John. Really appreciate your expert insight, mate, and enjoy your weekend footy, hey?
Certainly will, and don't moan too much about the ref when you get beaten, Jake.
Thanks, John.
To be sealed, mate.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, fellas.
Great stuff.